So I get this question a lot. Is my driver swing different than my iron swing? Well, let's find out. My verdict is no, but also yes. So essentially, it is the same golf swing. With an iron, we're not trying to be someone like a Matthew Wolf with our irons, and then we grab a driver and we're all of a sudden a John Rahm. That would be considered a completely different swing. So I would say that the swing is the same. However, there are some movements and some setup fundamentals that need to change based on optimizing the flight of both the iron and the driver. So the biggest differences between our iron and our driver is the fact that we use them completely differently. So the most simple way to explain this is with an iron, we want to have a descending blow versus a driver, we would like to have an ascending blow or hitting up on the ball. So irons, hit down, driver, hit up. Given the fact that the angle of attack we use with a driver versus an iron is totally different, one hitting up, one hitting down, of course we then need to think about the loft that is on the golf club. So I have my 7-iron here and I would want to de-loft the the club face on the way down versus a driver which is say 10 degrees of loft. When hitting up on that driver, we actually want to add loft. So in order to change our delivery, there's a couple of things we need to understand. Number one, intention. Intention is basically what are we trying to do with either the golf club or what are we trying to do or make the golf ball do during that impact area. So for example, if I want to hit an iron, my intention might be to hit a nice penetrating golf ball through the wind or whatever it might be. And in order to do that, my impact alignments are going to look a lot different than if I was hitting a driver. So with a driver in my hand, if my intention is not to hit a low stinging shot through the wind and I actually want to get that ball really high in the air, a couple of things would change. Obviously, my intention is going to change. So now my impact looks a little bit more like this. So in order to improve this in the most simple way, we need to change two things in my opinion. They need to be the ball position and they need to be your setup. So for an iron, we want a descending blow and to basically de-loft the golf club through impact. So what we would do with our setup is we would make sure that the golf ball is in the middle of our stance. The body would be fairly on top of that golf ball, maybe a little bit of spine angle away. But essentially, my head is directly over that golf ball, my pelvis, my chest, all lining up basically right on top of that golf ball. That's how I would set up to an iron if my intention is to hit down and compress that golf ball. Now, if I was to grab my driver and we think about ball position and setup, of course, we want to hit this nice and high. We want an angle of attack that's working up on the golf ball. We want to add loft to the driver. So our ball position and our setup must change accordingly. So now all of a sudden I want the ball position way more forward in our feet than an iron. Because I want to hit up on the golf ball, I want my upper body to be behind the ball. And this is going to give me my intention where I'm trying to hit up on the ball and hit this really high. It would start to make my impacts look a lot different than if I was hitting my iron, which would look a little bit more like this. And that's obviously not how we hit a driver. You saw at the start of this video, I struggled to get that drive up in the air. I actually topped it with the driver because I was trying to treat it like an iron shot. Versus the iron shot that I hit super high, I actually tried to run after it, it was that high. I treated the iron shot as a driver swing. So the swings in a way are the same, but the intention and how we set up and the way that we set up to that golf ball is different. So what I've now done is I've actually set up my TrackMan, which you can see in the corner of the screen there, and I'm going to look at two different numbers. We're going to look at the angle of attack and the dynamic loft. So the angle of attack is whether or not I am hitting up on the golf ball or down on the golf ball. The dynamic loft is basically what loft have I hit the golf ball at impact, essentially. So on my 7-iron, I have 34 degrees of loft static. So that is when I am sitting the golf club down there, it is showing me 34 degrees of loft. So what we would like to see is a downward angle of attack. Between 4 and 6 degrees would be fairly good. And I would like to see a dynamic loft of, say, 4 to 6 less than my static loft. So we're looking for a dynamic loft of, let's say, between 28 and 30 would be a pretty good number. Okay, so let's hit a golf shot. TrackMan, iPad, and let's see just those two numbers. I'm not worried about anything else, just angle of attack and dynamic loft is all I'm looking for. Again, the swing doesn't change by the look of it, okay? But the swing does change in regards to impact alignments. That's how I would think about this, okay? Let's hit that 7-iron, let's see what numbers we can produce, and then we'll hit the driver. So fairly decent there. So angle of attack was -3, so I hit down on the golf ball, 3 degrees, and my dynamic loft there was 23.4. Okay, so roughly about a 10-degree difference from static loft. So I hit down on the ball, de-lofted that golf club about 10 degrees. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the driver. Now what we're looking for with the driver, because it's on a tee, and we've got to understand this, the iron swing was on the ground, so I need a descending blow. The driver is on a tee, so I need a ascending blow. Okay, so I'm looking for my angle of attack to be in a positive number. Depending on the player, we can have a positive of between 1 to 5 is fairly decent. And my dynamic loft, given the fact that I have 10 degrees of loft on my driver, looking for it to be roughly maybe 12 to 14 degrees of loft at impact. So I'm actually adding loft to my driver at impact. So let's give this a go. Completely different setup to an iron. Remember, if you go back in the video, I showed you how to set up to these two golf shots. Ball on a tee, ball forward, upper body behind, and I'm trying to essentially launch this as high as I can in the air. So that one there was a little low on the face, not the greatest strike, but we can see here that the angle of attack was up 6.8 degrees and the dynamic loft was actually 17.7 degrees. So I added almost 8 degrees of loft to this driver at impact, and I hit up on the ball almost 7 degrees. So basically, to conclude this video, is the iron swing different to the driver swing? In a way, no, because I'm not trying to do anything different with my golf swing. I'm not trying to make it look different. But what I am doing is I'm changing my ball position and my setup based on the types of shots we are trying to hit with the golf clubs in our bag. This would also change with your wedges, with your 3-iron, with your longer irons, with your mid-irons. Everything changes just a little bit, but the golf swing itself, in my opinion, stays the same. So if you're someone who struggles to hit their driver really high in the air, hit those high bombs, you need to watch the video that's on the screen right now to find out that secret little recipe that you're missing in order to hit the driver high and far.